Yeah. Wow. You tired?
Yeah.
That is really good. And I just turned on the recorder, by the way, because I want to give you some comments on that and want you to be able to track them down later. So I just did this as you
Okay.
got towards the end, as you got to about the D chord there. Um,
Yeah.
the A bunch of that stuff you're doing is really good, and well, you want to rely on your ear to tell you whether you hit the right string or not, right? So you got to really listen. Like in the very beginning when you were not getting the third string, you were getting the second string most of the time. Um,
Yeah.
it's like you want that to register, and it's like, oh, that's not what it should sound like on this chord, you know. But
Yeah.
the really good thing you were doing there was, especially towards the end, you started mixing up the patterns, you know,
Yeah.
significantly. And if we talk about the whole philosophy of fingerpicking, or I guess the tools, you know, you keep your thumb alternating between whichever two strings you decide to use in the bass, and you know, most of the time,
Yeah.
I mean, we've got kind of like our standard ones. Then we have exceptions when we play like John Prine songs, and he always uses the third string as a bass note, little things like that. But um, and then you have eight possible spots you can put fingers in, because you could have a pinch on any beat, or you could have a finger on any and, right? So we've got these eight slots that you can play fingers in, right?
Right.
And in the very beginning, what you were doing was on the G chord. The first thing you did, I think, was something like this, just putting in like one finger either after the second beat or the third beat, you know. Then you started working in two fingers in there, you know, the kind of. And even when that's like part of the warm up drill, mix in your third finger. Start using your third finger as one of those. Maybe go do something like this, or or switch the order. You know, so the idea is just keep coming up with different configurations, and but then, so like in any one of those spots, any one of those eight spots could actually be any finger or even any combination of fingers. You could play two at a time or three at a time, you know, and so uh, so but then we have really just a small handful of things that are rhythmically different. Meaning, like right there, that pattern had no pinches in it. I just put fingers in between. And this was one of the first things I probably had you do a long time ago, was just get used to putting in like three fingers, one on each of the and after one, two, and three, something like this. Then maybe work in, so that is a totally useful pattern in a song, as long as you don't do it like just all the way through the song. You know, the whole idea with working on these patterns is to stop thinking about them and just play notes when it seems like you need a note. Now that's pretty vague, you know, but if you think about some of the main things you can do are you can have a pinch on either the first or the second beat. And that kind of then accents. I mean, you could have one later too, but these are two like mainly two distinctly different sounds. If I do this or this, that pinch on two gives us a different flavor, or you know, in that measure, right? So basically, either accent the first beat or the second beat by putting a pinch in, and that pinch could be a lot of notes. You can play everything right there, especially on the second beat. If it's on the second beat, the goal in every measure is to hear every string you can before the measure's over. Make sure, you know, now, sometimes you don't want to hear a certain note because of one like the highest one. A lot of times you might intentionally not play the first string, but it's like you always want to, if you're just singing a song, and it doesn't really matter what you do on the guitar, then you want to hear as much of the chord as possible as the harmony, right? So there really are only a couple. Like I said, there's a handful of important different rhythmic patterns. Either a pinch on one or a pinch on two, And then the rest of the measure is just like alternating notes. You don't need to get too fancy. Just put in stuff on the ands. You don't put anything on the and of 4 unless it continues to ring into the next measure. Like if I was going from a C chord to a G chord, I wouldn't want to hit like the second string on the and of 4 and then I'm going to let go of it and go to another chord. But I could, on the and of 4, hit the third string if I'm going to a G chord, because it's going to now keep ringing. Okay, so if you put something on the and of 4, it can't die right there. That's the thing. So if you're staying on the same chord, you can always have something there. You know, if you're not changing chords, so that's kind of one of the little side rules of fingerpicking, right? Nothing on the and of 4 unless it continues to ring onto the next beat 1.
And that comes up, it seems, in a lot of things. I mean, even I started knocking around Souvenirs a little bit, and it comes up in there where it rings over from.
Yeah, and usually when John Prine does it, and this is a lot of times it's a note not in the chord you're on, but in the chord you're going to. Like you might be going from D. Oh, this is exactly something he does in there. I might be thinking of a different song, but no, this is it. It's in Souvenirs. The last note in the measure of D is an open G. Is an open G.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's exactly proving. That's exactly the point I'm talking about, right?
Okay.
Had he tried to do this, like on the and of 4, hit like an F sharp. It's going to and then go to a G chord. It'll sound like this. It's like it's a train wreck, you know, or it's really clumsy.
Yeah.
So, but I could have hit a high G there. It's like I could anticipate the next chord. Did you hear that high G come in before the G in the bass? Okay, so that's another. You know, these are all proving the same point, right? Okay, so but the one so pinch on 1 or pinch on 2 and play as much. Generally, if I pinch on beat 2 buys you a lot of time to get the chord in good shape. So then, because you only need the bass note down on beat 1, and Paul Simon does this all the time in songs like The Boxer and stuff. And what I'm doing there is hitting a bass note. That was a C chord. I was hitting a bass note by itself on 1 and then pinching everything on beat 2. And now I've like accomplished my goal for that measure. I just heard the whole chord.
Right.
You know, and so if I have a couple extra notes, great, but nothing got left out. So so that's actually a really favorite kind of pattern, is hit the bass note alone on 1 and grab the whole chord on 2. That'll buy you time. If you're going to an F chord, it means you got get the bass down and then worry about the rest of the chord, you know, for a grab on 2. So those are kind of like 2 of the main flavors. One other one, there's really only 2 others I want to talk about. One is, which I already talked about, one is no pinch at all. Just alternate the notes. That's particularly useful. Matter of fact, when I just played those C chords like I was playing the Boxer, in the first measure of C, I pinched everything on beat 2, and then I kept just alternating. Now I'm also alternating the bass down to G on the 3rd beat in this. So my bass is this. And so my first measure, and it's okay to put a note on 4 because I'm staying on a C chord. In the second measure, I'm probably just going to keep that alternating going and not put anything else in there, no more pinches or anything. So my 2-measure pattern is something like this. And that's a great accompaniment for, in particular, that song. I am just a poor boy, though my story's seldom told. I have squandered my resistance for a pocket full of mumbles. Such are promises. Every chord change, I started with a bass note alone, and then put in the whole chord on beat 2. And then there were many places where they stayed on a chord for 2 measures, and so for the second measure, I just kept rolling through notes with nothing else. The last cool little thing or the last other important one is starting with pinching still on either 1 or 2, on beat 1 or beat 2, but following the pinch right away with another note on the and. Or I would almost always do that with the pinch being a higher note than the note that followed it. So if you notice what I did there, a lot of times I would do the pinch on the first string and follow it with the second string before the second bass note. Or on the second beat, or on the second string, following it with the first string. So that creates a whole different rhythmic feel. It kind of feels like it's rolling along. It's a little bit more, yeah, I don't know about a good way to describe it, but those are like the 4 or 5 main topics you want when you're just trying to play through a song, and it doesn't really matter what you play. You're just trying to, get all the notes of the chord in there. Pinch on either 1 or 2, and then just alternate after that. Possibly have the pinch followed by another note right away, in which case you wouldn't hit a whole chord. You wouldn't grab everything there, because you're just going to grab one thing and then follow it with this, or grab this and follow it with that. Or no pinch at all, which again works really well in a second measure of the same chord.
Right.
Okay.
What would be, so Boxer was an example of pinch on 2 and rolling through the rest of the, a pinch on 2 in the first measure of a 2-measure sequence.
Right, yeah.
Okay, what would be an example of the pinch followed by a note? Is there a song that?
Yeah, I can't think of anything specific where that happens. It's just something you could throw in almost any time. And I could, even if I was going to do 2 measures, let's get back to the Boxer for a second, because in the second measure I might do that.
Okay.
That had about 4 of the 5 elements I just talked about, with the whole pinch on 2, so that we hear the chord, and a note played on the and of 4, because I'm staying on a C chord. So again, my first measure was this. That and of 4 is now going to lead me into a pinch on 1 that I'm going to follow with another finger right away. So I'm going to follow that and of 4. So I actually had 3 consecutive eighth notes that all got played. The and of 4, the pinch on 1, and the and of 1. Here that is again. I'll do it a little slower. Or here is that. Now, see, that doesn't even sound like a pattern when you hear it like that. It's because there's so much going on. And if I change chords right there, if I just keep doing that through like 4 or 5 chords, you'll have to pay really close attention to hear that it was all the same thing. Every 2 measures will be identical here. So that's like one of the most popular chord progressions ever, too. I went from C to G to A minor to F. You could hear that I wasn't done, like I didn't come back to C to end it. But that's, thousands of songs follow that type of chord progression. But
when you're doing, in that particular sequence, when you're doing the pinch on 2, you pinching on the C chord, you're grabbing all the strings?
All bass note I'm hitting the 4th string in the bass and all 3 top strings together. And this is where you might have to work on your right hand position a little bit, because I can see right now, just looking at your hand, I can't see your thumb, which means it's inside your first finger. Okay?
Yeah.
And you're going to have trouble hitting two strings adjacent to each other unless your thumb is out in front of your, is it this way? And your finger, so your finger has to pull into your hand and your thumb has to stay outside of the fist.
That's, yeah, see, I'm working on that.
Yeah.
And it's, unfortunately, this is part of my sort of physical limitation.
Yeah, little finger. Oh, yeah.
See that?
Mm-hmm.
That's the Dupuytren's thing I think I told you about.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
basically, this is pulling over to here.
Yeah.
The whole thing is, I have a hard time keeping my thumb out here.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this is a good exercise. Maybe I can teach myself to do that. Or
You know, a really good exercise I mean, just a drill to do that is just practice hitting the same string with your thumb and your index finger, alternating them. They got to stay out of each other's way for that to work. No, even the same string. Have them both hit the fourth string.
oh, okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That physically, that is very hard to do.
Yeah. You
Unfortunately.
might be able to have your whole hand a little bit lower so that your thumb's not reaching down so much, you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like yeah.
Like here.
Yeah.
Oop. Okay.
It was interesting when you were showing me your thumbs like that because I have the same thing in terms of this one. I've got a hitchhiker's thumb here, and this one, because of a skiing accident many years ago, does not bend like that.
Right.
You know, it sounds like it's an opposite problem with yours, though, that this is the one that's the problem and
Yeah.
not this one, you know?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's. I mean, they're very different in terms of their
Yeah,
configuration, and it's the same reason this is.
right. Is kind of, yeah, curled up a little bit. Luckily, that doesn't affect your guitar playing too much, I hope, your little finger.
Well, not the little finger.
Right.
No, the only thing that affects it is the shape of my hand
Mm-hmm.
on the finger picking stuff, and also on when I'm strumming, my hands often feels like it's in kind of the wrong place to rotate. But anyway,
Yeah.
stuff I got to work with. That's
Okay.
the
Yeah.
unique circumstances. So
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's got a different set of demons, you know?
yeah. So the all those things we were talking about in terms of patterns and all work with songs also, where like in John Prine songs or even in Blackbird, you might be playing the bass note all the way down here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The range of the bass note in the thumb is accommodated by the same thing. I mean, you can do that, right?
Right. Right. And really, yeah. So your thumb has to be ready to play any one of the bottom four strings, and almost never the second or first string. You know, never in a finger picking is your thumb going to play one of those. Those are never going to be bass notes. You know, but the third string is definitely fair game as a bass note. You know, and on many chords it's essential. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in songs like in Blackbird, that the thumb is down there the whole time.
Right. And
It's always the 2 and the 4 is in Blackbird is always
always always the third string. Yeah. Yeah. And not sure if we talked about this, but okay, so I usually have people in the early stages of fingerpicking. I always want them to learn Blackbird, but it's like it's a major exception to lots of finger picking rules because of that, because we're always playing the third string. And what happens again in Blackbird is we don't end up using this finger at all. It doesn't play a single note in the whole song. You just take it off the table, right?
Right.
So that's what I mean. It's a very it's an exception to like every normal finger picking thing, every other normal finger picking thing you're going to do. But it's just a great exercise for control fingers and all kinds of stuff, and left hand. I mean, it's I don't know. And I'm not,
No, it's Blackbird is one of the things that I've managed to, I think, memorize most of.
good.
I think I can do Blackbird,
Oh, let's
but
hear
I
it.
can't, but I can't do it fast.
Oh no,
Uh,
don't. Like the other thing I tell people when they're working on Blackbird is absolutely do not go listen to Paul McCartney's recording of it because it'll frustrate you. You say, "Oh my God, I'll never be able to play that fast."
how does he do it? I could sort of go through it as a, if I don't try to sing it to myself, but I try to think of the, just the, you know, whoop, whoop. I haven't done this in a while.
That's okay.
Whoop, whoop.
Upside down.
I could do it better than
Yeah, that's okay. That's great. Good job correcting something too. On the first time, remembering that fourth string is the bass note when you get down to the note at the first fret.
Yeah.
So that was good that you noticed the first time you didn't do it and that you fixed it the second time. That was great. Um,
Yeah.
so in the interest of like full disclosure about this, I'm not sure if I ever gave you this story about Blackbird because this is not exactly how he plays it. In other words, this is not his right hand technique.
Right.
Because he's not really as proficient as Lennon was at keeping a steady alternating bass going with his thumb. Lennon did this in Dear Prudence and Julia and a few others, all from the same time, because they both learned about fingerpicking in February of 1968 when they were in India with the Maharishi and Donovan. And so Donovan, the English folk singer, was kind of a master of this. And it's like he showed them this trick, and then he showed them the technique. And then when they got back and started recording the White Album that came out in late 1968, it all of a sudden had a whole bunch of fingerpicking songs on it because it's like it was the latest thing they had just learned from Donovan. But what Paul really does in this, if I haven't shown you this before, is he never hits this bass note at all. He strums the strings lightly with his fingers instead. So it's even harder to do it like that, when you're. I mean, that's like just a free form technique. It's half picking and half strumming,
Yeah.
and so it's so I rarely teach people that. That's like a more advanced version of it because that style it's so unusual to do stuff like that. Pinching notes and then strumming in the middle of them and then pinching them again, and keeping it all together. But that's just what he figured out by himself as a as a cool technique. So
Right. So that this always inspires me to just go back and work on this again. But
good.
which I think just sort of just fits into the. It's just a different pattern and a different thing. There's nothing other than the fact that it's basically isolated to that kind of a pinch and all. That's really all.
Yeah.
But I'm going to continue to work through that, and I think I want to. I started looking at souvenirs,
Okay.
and I guess applying some of what we're talking about here on souvenirs.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm gonna. I think again, like the other John Prine songs, there's the whole the timing elements that are interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I would say.
Yeah.
There's that like. Oh, that was actually a question. When you the beginning of this thing is in D.
Right.
We're in D down here.
Yeah.
And these pinches right here, if I was just playing, I guess down here in D, I would be hitting that string with my index finger.
Yes. Yeah.
And so the pinch is that's the pinch.
Yeah.
Okay, so this kind of goes along with the exercise we were talking about.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So okay.
Slow down a little bit, but that was right. Just take it a little slower than that.
Okay.
Da 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 da.
Okay. Okay.
Note. Okay, so you're looking carefully at the music here. Because of that last note, that open G that gets played at the end,
Yep.
he has to double up on the D and the bass on the third and the fourth B. So he doesn't alternate the last bass note. See, the two bass notes at the end of the measure are both Ds, right?
Yeah.
And it's because he's taken aim at getting this finger to hit the third string open. So there's no way he's going to hit the bass note first with his thumb and then hit the same string with a finger. So,
okay.
do you see?
Okay. I thought what happened there was we were going from D. The last sequence was it was D to G. That was actually a question. D to G.
Right.
It's D to G, right?
Right. So let go of the chord. The whole chord comes off.
Okay.
Because you're on your way to the G chord, right? So the reason so see that last note is open because he's let go of the D chord. He's already on his way to D, on his way to G. So you don't just take this finger off to make it open. You bail. The whole chord is gone, and you're halfway to G right now.
Okay.
That's why that note is open. Oh no, you didn't get the third string. The third with your index finger, the last note of the measure of D. You got to make sure you get the third string right. I think you got the second string. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, but positionally, that's where you play the G here as opposed to here.
Oh yes. You know what? You know what? Get the G in the bass. So actually, you're going to leave your third finger where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a good time to do that G chord. Now, he does this. He plays the G in the bass with his thumb. So he leaves his third finger where it came from the D chord, and then wraps his thumb around for the G in the bass, and then later on the F sharp in the bass Right, so that's what he does. But I would suggest doing what you just tried there. Use your second finger there, and then later on your first right. Yeah,
To hit the F sharp.
yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then it goes to A7, and I would just use normal fingering for the A7, second and third fingers. Yeah. Oh, and then on that chord, he plays the fifth and third strings in the bass on the A7. Wait, you're looking like A minor of some sort. A7.
Uh, I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fade here.
Start with
A7.
the yeah, yeah. The second finger there, and then your third finger on the second string. Third,
Oh,
third
right.
finger. No. Third finger on the second string.
Third
There,
finger.
at the yeah, there.
Just eliminate that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then he has a little bit of a melody that gets played here. Like your third finger is going to move around a little bit.
Okay.
There are some
This.
tricky little changes in this.
Oh, yeah. I see. Yeah. It goes. Yeah. To here. Yeah. Back there. Okay.
And the first measure of A7 is a good example of a measure that doesn't have any pinches in it. All the melody notes are on the ands.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but he plays that. Okay. Plays that down there.
So
Uh,
he actually doesn't play the fourth string at all.
okay.
Even though, but he has a finger on it just in case. you know. So because he does the third string as the bass note, right? Yeah. And that you just move that finger. Oh, now. Oh, let me look at that. Play it again. Let me hear that again.
Okay. Um, oh, I missed it.
Keep going. Keep going. Good. That's perfect.
Okay. And then.
Now he goes to the D chord quick. Right. This isn't the last note of that measure the second fret of the third string of the A7 measure.
The last note of the A7 measure is an open G.
Okay, so it just ends with a bass note, right? Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Right,
there.
right. So it's your thumb. Yeah. And
There.
then it's back to a D chord.
Right.
And I think does that start with a pinch? Yeah. Yeah, so that's a case where he plays those two notes together, and then the second one is the bass note again.
Right.
Yeah. Start again.
Here we go. It's, no, this one. Oh,
Yeah.
I got it. I got it. It's feel like I'm lost here. No, it's this one.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to work through that.
Let me track this down. Let me get that page up. Let me play that for you right here on this recording really slowly. Okay, there we go. Okay, so what we have is this. And again, even in the lesson I put together on this, I did it with a capo at the second, but here we are with it uncapoed, right? Okay, so there you have. That was pretty much note for note what's on that whole page. I forgot there are some other unusual things in there. Oh, like in the third line, you've got a D chord on, and you have to reach up to the fifth fret,
Right.
right? And yeah,
That's a stretch.
it's a bit of a stretch, you know, and you really can't let go of too much when you do that. And interestingly, if you listen to his recordings of this, he never gets that note. He tries all the time, but he always clunks it. You know, so you can tell that that's a note he's trying to get. But and I usually, you know, a great thing in a lot of times you do need that high A with a D chord. Okay, and that's a good time to think about playing the D, except for the fact that we've got some hammer-ons happening down in here at certain spots. But if you need that A a lot, you can play the D with a half a bar at the third fret, and then your second finger here on the third string, I mean on third fret, yeah, and then it's easy to reach that A.
Oh yeah.
Right? Okay. So that's the most efficient way to do that. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah, here. Okay. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh. Okay, here's an even better approach. When you have to get that high note, you can let go of these two other notes briefly on the D chord, and then just as long as you don't let go of the bass note, right? Because it's immediately going to be followed by the F sharp again. So the F sharp on the second fret. So it could look like this. See, it's like, you know, you can let go of those other two fingers and just come up here and then rotate this one a little bit and then grab that high note and then get right back to the D chord. Yeah. That's probably a better approach, because we do the measure starts with a hammer on. So it's that kind of makes it, otherwise you'd have to change it into this bar somewhere in the middle. But
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the strategy there.
Okay.
So
all right. And just structurally, this is the whole intro to the song, this whole first page, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then when the chorus or the verse actually starts, it's not the repeat of this. It's somewhere in the middle of it, isn't it?
What happens is the G chord is really the first chord of the verse.
Okay.
But he sings a whole line. What's the first line of words? What's the word start with again? Do you have it right there?
All the snow is turned
Oh
to
yeah.
water.
Okay, good. Okay. So when we finish that intro, and he ends with the hammer on. All the snow is turned to water. So that's the way the verses are laid out. Is there's a long pickup vocal. Da 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 da. Now we're at what I would call measure one, which is the G chord. Okay, and so if you look at the chart there, that I think I have. Let me.
Yeah, G, okay, I see how it goes. Yeah, 87. Okay.
Right, and so, but everything ends with a couple measures of D, and those two measures of D are what are used to kick back. Like if you look at the first ending of the verse, that first measure, where the D is written, and then we've got three slashes, right? That the last word, all that's left to linger on. The word "on" is right on that D chord. Or all that's left to linger. Now I'm on the D, on the first of four measures of D. On. And I would stop here. I hate graveyards and old. So that line right there, graveyards and old pawn shops, the word shops is where the G chord is.
Okay.
That's really the beginning of the verse.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. So the structure of it seems a little odd, you know, like, and in the introduction we think of the D as the starting point. It's not. That whole, everything in D that we have, that's the pickup line. I mean, that's all the snow is turned to, right? And so again, it leads into the G chord that I would call measure 1. And the D is measure -1 and -2, or something.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 measures of D. So,
Okay.
hey, if you want to try something else too, I don't know if we've talked about a couple of instrumentals that I have that are good beginning finger picking exercises that I have at Totally Guitars. Have we talked about Shades of Funk or Grandfather's Clock?
Grandfather's Clock. We might have. Huh?
Okay, let me give you a quick sales pitch on those two. Shades of Funk is basically just 2 bass notes altered. It's mostly revolves around a G chord, keeping the steady bass the whole time, and starts off with a very easy measure, just a pinch on a G7 chord, and then a little bluesy lick. This is the main theme of the song. Finally, a chord change. Little F, but you don't need a bar on that F at all. Then a couple other little melodies come in. Repeats that. Couple hammer-ons here. Anyway, it's just a bunch of fairly easy little licks, but a really good coordination exercise to try to put together something that is just a touch more complicated than the kind of generic patterns we were talking about before. It's now bringing in a little bit of, a little melody, but all easy stuff to reach. It's right on par with like a John Prine song, except that it's we'd usually play it slower and anyway, it's a little more melodic. Grandfather's Clock is this melody from the 1860s. Just done with alternating bass and changing chords. So if you're running out of things to do and you want to look at some little instrumental finger picking pieces, those would be 2 that would be really good at this stage, I think.
And in Grandfather's Clock, the pattern, your alternating bass. What were you filling in there with?
So pretty much almost every measure has 3 melody notes in it. Like the first measure, there's a couple pickup notes. Then in the first measure of C, the 3 melody notes are C, B, C. And so the pattern turns out to be a pinch on 1, and then the other 2 melody notes on the and of 2 and the and of 3. Okay, so then a bass, and then back to another C in the melody. So the melody goes C, B, C. Yeah.
Oh, I got to get back.
Right, you got to put it back on. Careful, watch that bass note. Make sure the bass gets that you get the 4th string as the second bass note. That was it. That was right. Yeah.
Okay.
And when it goes, then there's only 3 chords with C chords. It goes to G's, and all you ever need on the G is the G and the bass, and then you're going to have a couple melody notes up here that you'll move around. And then whenever an F chord happens, you want to play it like this with your third finger on the fourth string, not as a full F, because you're going to need your fourth finger for a melody note up here. So you may notice, but anytime you see me play F, it's like, yeah, I think your second finger's on the wrong string.
My second finger. Oh, here.
There, yeah, okay. So, you know, 99% of the time that you see me play a bar chord like this out of the E family, it's going to look like that, because I'm not going to waste a finger on the fifth string.
Okay.
Because the bass is going to be 6 and 4. Okay.
Right.
And so now the only thing you got to remember is this is not strummable like this, because the fifth string is like, you know, the wrong note now. So, yeah.
Okay.
Anyways,
Great.
if you want, take a look at those two, Shades of Funk and Grandfather's Clock. They'd both be good things to do.
I think I will. Those are fun. Okay.